Even Michael stepped aside. Even Lucifer lowered his gaze. There is one angel who does not fight battles. He does not deliver divine messages. He doesn't argue. He doesn't warn. He arrives in silence. And when he does, the story ends. Not just your story, but any story. Because he doesn't represent punishment. He doesn't bring judgment. He is something far more absolute. The boundary. His presence means only one thing. Your time is over. This is Azrael, the angel of death. Feared not for what he says, but for what he means. He is not the villain of heaven's tale. He is its final punctuation, the one who appears in the last sentence on the last page of every soul's book. Today, we're diving into the true story of Azrael, a being so vast, so unknowable, that even the angels who bear the throne of God are said to avert their eyes when he passes. But before we begin, I want you to sit with this question. If Azrael came for you tonight, what would he look like? Would he be terrifying or radiant? Would he rip your soul away or whisper it gently from your chest? Drop your answer in the comments below. And stick with us until the final chapter, because we're not just telling you how Azrael takes souls, we're revealing the prophecy where Azrael himself ends death. That's right, the day when death appears not as an idea, but as a creature, and Azrael is commanded to strike it down. Once you hear that story, you'll never think of life or endings the same way again. So settle in, take a breath, and let's walk together to the edge of life's last mystery. Because this is Secret Origins, and what you're about to hear might just change how you see the world forever. There's a story so old, it echoes from a time before time itself, before there was death, before there was life. When the universe was still being written, God gave a command to the angels. He asked them to go down to earth and gather a handful of dust. Not just any dust. This would become the flesh of the very first human, Adam, the beginning of us. And so the angels obeyed. One by one, they descended. First came Michael, the warrior, strong, loyal, unstoppable. But as he reached toward the soil, the earth spoke. It wept, and it begged. "Do not take from me," it said. "I am afraid of what this dust will become." Michael heard the earth's cry, and he couldn't go through with it. He returned to the heavens, empty-handed. Then came Gabriel, the messenger, gentle, wise, swift as the wind. He too reached toward the earth, and once again the ground pleaded, "Please, leave me whole." Gabriel's heart was moved, and so he turned away. Two of the greatest angels, unable to do it, not out of weakness, but compassion. Then God called Azrael. At this point, Azrael wasn't the angel of death. He wasn't famous. He didn't lead battles. He was quiet, obedient, unseen. But when he was sent, he went. He heard the earth's cries, felt its fear, and still he reached down. Some stories say he whispered back, "I will return what I take."
Others say, he said nothing at all. But what matters is he completed the task. He did what the others could not. He brought the dust back to God. That one act changed everything. Because in that moment, Azrael proved something. He could carry the unbearable. He could obey not because he was cold, but because he was strong enough to follow through with what was necessary. You see, sometimes the hardest thing to do is the thing everyone else walks away from. Not because they're wrong, but because the task is too heavy. Azrael showed he could carry it. And so, God gave him a role that no other angel could bear. He became the one who would return to earth again, but this time, not to gather dust, but to guide souls. He would be there, not at the beginning of life, but at its end. Azrael was no longer just an angel. He became Malak al-Maut, the angel of death. But don't be mistaken. He wasn't chosen because he loved endings. He was chosen because he could carry the weight of them. And his journey was only beginning. Because to understand who Azrael really is, we have to go far beyond the dust. We have to see the form he was given and the terrifying, magnificent body that reflects every soul alive.
Now that Azrael had been chosen, he was no longer just one of the angels. He had a task no other could carry. And for that, he was given a form unlike anything the heavens had ever seen. Azrael's body was not human. It was not even angelic in the way we imagine: glowing robes, soft feathers, golden halos. He was shaped for a purpose, a single divine design to reach every soul, everywhere, at once. According to ancient Islamic texts, Azrael has 4 faces, each one facing a different direction: north, south, east, and west. Not to look beautiful, but to always be watching. Because death doesn't knock from one side. It comes from anywhere. But that was only the beginning. Azrael is said to have 4,000 wings. Not delicate, not decorative. Some of these wings are made of grace, light, radiant, soft, used to carry the righteous toward peace. But others are forged of iron rods, hooked blades, and scissors sharper than any human weapon. These are for souls steeped in cruelty, souls who fled mercy, and now must face justice. His wings are not ornaments, they are instruments. And then there is his body. It is said that Azrael's entire form is covered in eyes and tongues, not metaphorically, literally. Every eye sees a living soul. Every tongue speaks that soul's voice. When a person is born, a new eye and tongue appear. And when that person dies, they vanish. One blink, one silence, one soul, gone. It's hard to imagine, but it means that Azrael is never guessing. He's never searching. He already knows exactly where you are. He is with you always, watching, listening, waiting. This form, as terrifying as it sounds, serves one purpose: connection. Azrael isn't just a taker, he's a witness. His body reflects the living map of humanity. Some mystics believe his eyes don't just see you, they understand you. They see your regrets, your goodness, your fear, your readiness. Think about that. What if the moment you pass wasn't a surprise to him at all, but something he had felt in his body for your entire life? That's why ancient scholars said Azrael's appearance is always shifting, because it mirrors the number of people alive at any moment. His form breathes with the rhythm of our existence. So when people ask, does death come too soon? Maybe the better question is, has death always been walking beside us, quietly, patiently, personally, through Azrael? Because he doesn't just end your story, he carries it. And to carry so many souls, he needed power far beyond what we can understand. Which brings us to something even more mysterious. Not how Azrael appears, but what he becomes when you look directly into him.
We often imagine death as a fixed image, a figure in black robes, a silent shadow, a cold scythe raised in the dark. But Azrael doesn't look like that. At least not to everyone. Because Azrael doesn't wear one face. He wears your face, the one only your soul can see. You see, Azrael isn't just the angel of death. He is a mirror that reflects exactly what your soul is in its final moment. For the righteous, for the faithful, for those who lived with love, kindness, and quiet devotion, Azrael is not frightening. In fact, he's beautiful. Ancient stories tell us that when the Prophet Muhammad was visited by Azrael, he didn't see terror. He saw a respectful guest, a being of peace offering a quiet invitation to return home. The same is said of Moses, who was also met directly by Azrael himself, not a servant angel, but Azrael in person. No pain, no fear, just understanding. For these souls, Azrael comes in light, gentle, warm, like the glow of sunrise after a long night. Some describe it as if an old friend arrived, not to take, but to guide. But not every soul sees him this way. There are other stories of those whose lives were filled with cruelty, pride, dishonesty, souls that turned away from mercy. For them, Azrael appears very differently. He becomes a presence so heavy, so cold, it crushes even the strongest spirit. His form reflects their fear, their regret, their resistance. And instead of being lifted, their soul is torn. This isn't punishment, it's reflection. As the Sufi mystics teach, Azrael appears in the form of your soul. If your soul is at peace, he is peace. If your soul is in chaos, he becomes the storm. And that's what makes Azrael different from every other angel. Michael fights with a sword. Gabriel delivers messages. But Azrael, he doesn't act the same way twice, because no two souls are alike. He doesn't follow rules. He follows truth. Your truth.
Think of him not as the end, but as a reflection, a final, sacred mirror held up to show you exactly what you've become. Not what the world saw, but what your soul carried when no one else was watching. And sometimes that mirror arrives before death. There are countless stories from dreamers, prophets, poets who claim to have seen Azrael before their time came. One of them was Rumi, the great Persian poet. As he neared death, he said Azrael appeared to him, not as a demon, not as a fear, but as a gentle visitor who brought peace. Another was Nasir Khusrav, who wrote about seeing Azrael in a dream. In that vision, Azrael told him, "Your time is near." And so Khusrav spent his last days praying, reflecting, and preparing. These stories aren't about death, they're about grace. A final chance to see yourself clearly before the door closes. And that's what Azrael offers, not just an ending, but a moment of deep truth. Because once that mirror fades, there's only one step left: to leave this world and be carried into the next. But who carries you? And what path do you follow once the soul has left the body? The answer isn't what you think, because Azrael doesn't work alone. And what happens next is bigger than just one soul.
Azrael is often seen as a lone figure, silent, still, and solitary. But in truth, he commands an entire army. Because death doesn't happen one soul at a time, not always. In times of war, in great disasters, in moments when thousands leave the world at once, Azrael cannot be everywhere in form, but his presence is still felt through those who act in his name. Many traditions describe a group known as the Angels of Death, not in singular, but in plural, spiritual assistants carrying out Azrael's work under his direction. These angels, his unseen network, move across the earth just as silently as their commander. And here's the part that most people miss. Not all of these angels are the same. Some arrive gently, with peace in their wings, especially for those whose lives have been filled with grace. They come as guides, as comforting escorts into what lies beyond. But others come with fire, with wind, with force. They do not come to comfort. They come to collect. And which ones arrive depends on the state of the soul, not the power of the angel. This shows us something important. Azrael is not just a servant, he is a leader, a commander of spiritual balance. He oversees this unseen system, keeping the rhythm of life and death flowing without delay, without mistake. And for every single human name, Azrael holds a place. According to sacred tradition, he carries a divine scroll, a record of all living souls. When a person is born, their name appears, and when they die, their name is removed. He doesn't guess. He doesn't choose. He simply waits for the moment that was written from the beginning. This scroll reminds us Azrael's work is not emotional, it's not personal, it is divine. But what happens after a soul is taken? What lies on the other side of that threshold? That's where another side of Azrael appears, a side many forget. Because Azrael is more than just the angel who ends the story. He is the psychopump, the one who guides the soul into what comes next. The Greeks had Hermes, the Egyptians Anubis. The Norse spoke of Valkyries who carried warriors to the afterlife. But in Islamic and Jewish traditions, that role belongs to Azrael. He doesn't simply cut the thread, he walks the soul forward. And that journey,
is different for everyone. Some souls are carried gently into rest. Others are escorted to judgment, some to joy, others to reckon with what they've done. But either way, Azrael makes sure the journey begins. He is not death. He is what comes after. In the words of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, "There is no death. What seems so is transition." And Azrael is the guide through that transition. Even Western writers like G.K. Chesterton saw Azrael not as a reaper, but as a divine force summoned during moments of deep spiritual war, when souls are torn between light and shadow. So the next time you imagine death, don't picture silence. Picture motion, a procession, a journey led by one who has walked every step 1,000,000,000 times before and still walks it again with you. And now, we've reached the final and most mysterious part of this story. Because what if death was not just something Azrael delivered? What if death was something Azrael had the power to end?
There is one last story, one final chapter that almost no one talks about. Not because it's secret, but because it's almost too big to imagine. It comes at the end of time, after the world has ended, after every soul has been judged, after heaven and hell have been filled. All stories complete. And in that moment, one task remains. God brings forth death itself, but not as a concept, as a creature. Some traditions say it will appear in the form of a ram, living, visible, undeniable. And before the eyes of all creation, the angels, the saints, the sinners, the saved, God commands it to be slain. And death dies. In that moment, the door finally closes. There are no more goodbyes, no more last breaths, no more fear, only eternity. But here's what makes that moment so powerful. The one who carries out this task is not Michael, not Gabriel, not any of the bearers of the throne. It is Azrael. The one who walked every soul to the edge of time is the one who ends time's greatest shadow. And with that final act, Azrael's role is complete. There are no more souls to guide, no more names to erase, no more eyes or tongues to carry on his body. Some mystics say that in that instant, Azrael does not disappear. He is not destroyed. He simply steps out of time, because his purpose has been fulfilled. And this brings us to a truth we've hinted at all along. Azrael may not have been a servant of death. He may have been death itself, but not in the way we fear it, not a punishment, not a monster in black robes, but a force shaped by divine mercy to carry us home when the story was finished. Azrael didn't follow death. Death followed him. And when he is done, so is death. So maybe the scariest angel was never meant to scare us. Maybe he was the most trusted, the one God chose to hold the weight no one else could carry. Because without death, there can be no rebirth. Without endings, there can be no eternity. And that's what makes Azrael not just the angel of endings, but the angel of what comes next.
Now that you've heard Azrael's story, How do you see him? Was he a shadow to fear, or a guardian who walks beside you when no one else can? Is he the end of the road, or the one who opens the gate to what lies beyond? Because here's the truth. Death is not the villain we were taught to fear, and Azrael is not a monster in the dark. He is a mirror. He is a guide. He is the last hand that holds yours when the world fades away. And maybe that's not something to fear. Maybe that's something to be grateful for. So now I ask you, if Azrael came for you tonight, what would you want him to look like? Tell us in the comments. And if this story made you feel something, peace, wonder, curiosity, even fear, hit that like button and subscribe to join us for more stories that walk the line between legend and truth. Until next time, stay open, stay curious, and remember, every story has an ending, but not every ending is the end.